Alright, in this project we're going to be creating a fidget spinner, very basic. We're following this as our guide, the design for this. So 3 different bearings and this circular, curvy design, very symmetrical. So let's get started. You want to be in millimeters, so click on the arrow next to create new and select decimal millimeters. It takes a little while for the workspace to load up. First thing we're going to do is draw a circle. So I'm going to go ahead and grab the circle tool. It may show up as a rectangle here, so let me just switch to that. So you see rectangle, click on that, and then switch to circle. When we draw circles, I'm going to on purpose use the point of origin. That way it's easy to find the center of my project. I'm going to click there to place the center of my circle, and then drag away, and I like to line things up either with the green or the red axis. So not out here at a random angle, and you'll see why in just a moment. So just make sure that you're either along the green or the red axis, and then type in the value 11, and then enter. So we have a circle with an 11 millimeter radius. So right now it's too small to see. So here's one tip. I'm going to go ahead and delete the larger object. So select the lady there and click backspace to get rid of that. So we're way zoomed out. So to zoom into what you're drawing, you can use this simple tool. Click on the last tool on the left, and then the last tool in the arc there is zoom extents. Click that one time and it will zoom in to see your drawing, your current drawing, whatever size it is. So now we can see this up close. So we have a circle with an 11 millimeter radius, which means the diameter from one end to the other is 22 millimeters. That's specific for the size of bearing that we're going to be using for our fidget spinner. So that's one measurement, 11 millimeter radius. So this represents what will eventually be empty space. So what I like to do next is surround that empty space with what will eventually be plastic. So I'm going to now define a 3 millimeter extension of this. So I'm going to be offsetting this basically 3 millimeters. So I'm creating my second circle, and if my first circle was 11, this one needs to be 14 millimeters radius in order to have 3 millimeters of plastic in between the bearing and the outer world. So it needs to be housed in at least 3 millimeters worth of plastic. Alright, so that's the center of our project. Let's go ahead and visualize this by selecting the center surface and press backspace to get rid of it. This is where the bearing will go. Next, let's talk about the measurement for the maximum size. So here on our example, your fingers will be attached to the center, and then it needs to be able to spin freely without hitting your palm. So that measurement for each person is going to be a little bit different, but in general, the distance between the center to the outermost part needs to be between 45 and 50 millimeters. Anything bigger than that starts to become an issue. So I'm going to use the measurement of 45 just as a reference. So I'm going to grab the measure tape and click on the point of origin and drag along the green axis and then type 45. That gives me a reference point, a guide point, that is 45 millimeters away from the center. Now what I want to do is place my first of 3 bearings on the outer circle. So the outer edge of the circle cannot pass the 45 millimeters. So basically what I want to do is have another circle with this point attached at this point. So I'm going to use the move copy tool, before I do that, I want to go ahead and select what I want to move and copy. So I'm going to drag a box around with the select tool. So use this. Click to start a rectangle, then drag and select all those objects. And then I'm going to use the move tool. Press Control one time to get into copy mode. Down here you can see Control equals cycle copy stamp move. So it was in the move mode, now we're in copy mode, and it has that plus symbol. So I'm going ahead and grab the object now from the top where it intersects the green line, because this is where I want to eventually attach it up here. So I'm going to grab it strategically right here. So I'm going to click one time to grab it, and then I'm going to move along the green axis until I get to that guide point, and then click to place it. So now I have my first of 3 circles in place. Alright, so now what I'm going to do is going to zoom out a little bit so I can just envision what this is going to look like. I need to create 2 more additional circles the same distance away from the center and equally spaced out. So in math, geometry, a triangle has 3 sides and a circle has 360 degrees total. So if you divide 360 degrees by 3, that gives you 120 degrees. So my circles are spaced out 120 degrees away from each other. So if this is 0, my first one's going to be at 120, then it's going to be at 240, and then from 240 to 360 to get back to my beginning point. So that's my measurement, is 120 degrees. What I'm going to use is now a special tool that allows me to rotate and copy at the same time. This rotate tool we have used before, but we've used it to simply rotate objects. To get into copy mode, it's very similar to the move tool. You just press Control once. You can see down here in the instructions that says Control equals toggle copy. Now I get a plus symbol there indicating that I will be copying whatever object is currently selected. That being said, let me just state that if this is not currently selected, this will not work correctly. So I need to make sure that this circle is selected. So again, I'm just going to drag a selection box around it, and this is not completely selected. I can add objects by holding the Shift key down. I want to add the surface, and then I also want to add the outer circle. So now all that I want to copy is selected. So I'm going to go back to that rotate and copy tool. So here's rotate. Make sure I press Control to copy, and then in the instructions it says click to set the center point of rotation. So I'm going to click the point of origin as the center point, and then the next step would be to grab basically anywhere in space and then rotate. So if you don't have a specific reference point that you're trying to match, you can just grab anywhere by clicking anywhere. So I'm just going to click here, start rotating, and I'm copying and rotating at the same time. So now I just need to type in 120, enter, to rotate that first copied circle 120 degrees. Now, once I've done rotating my first circle, it remains selected, and I'm still in the rotate and copy mode. As you can see, there's still the plus symbol. So now all I need to do is click the center to place the center point again. This time I'm just going to grab the edge of the circle just to show you that now I can actually visualize where to place it. And again, 120 is the measurement. Press enter. So now I have successfully placed the 3 bearing housings. We're just visualizing it in 2 dimensions right now with these donut shaped circles. Alright, next thing I want to do is create the arc between the circles. So I'm talking about this shape here. And I'm going to somewhat just be eyeballing where to place it, but I want it to be symmetrical, so I'm going to show you how to successfully do that. What I have now is I have 3 circles, and this red line goes perfectly perpendicular to both circles. So I'm going to use that reference to make sure that when I click over here, I click on the same spot over here. So I'm going to use the red axis to make sure that it's symmetrical. I'll show you what you don't want to do. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the tool that I want to use, which is the 2-point arc. And if I don't take any time to do this specifically, I could start my arc here on one circle and then start my arc over here on the other circle and then click to make my arc. And you can see that's not symmetrical. It starts way lower over here and way higher over here on the circle. So I'm going to eliminate that by doing it this time referencing the red line and making a guide point. So let me go ahead and undo that step. First thing I'm going to do is just create a guideline with the measure tape. And I'm going to imagine my first point that I want to attach is probably going to be here on the circle. I'm just guessing at this point. So I'm just going to click here and then make sure that I drag away along the red axis straight across to where it intersects the other circle. I'm going to click. Now I have this guideline that I can use to make sure that I'm clicking on the same point on both circles. So I'm going to go ahead now and start my 2-point arc. I'll click here to place the first point, second point on the other intersection point, and then now I need to determine what, I'm going to make sure it's lined up correctly, what the bulge is. I'm going to use 8 millimeters. That looks like a good measurement to me. Or I could just reference, if I want it to be exactly 3 millimeters away from the center bearing, I could just click on the edge of the circle and attach it there. So let's go ahead and use that as a reference. So now I have an arc connecting my 2 circles. That looks pretty good. Okay, now what I need to do is copy this arc in between each of these circles. Now I could do the work and try to duplicate the arc in between each of these circles, but to me it's much easier to select the current arc that I have. Go click it, now it's in 2 halves. So I'll hold the shift key down, select both halves of the arc, then go to that same rotate copy tool. So now it's in rotate mode. I'm going to press Control 1 time to make sure I'm going to copy it. Then click on the point of origin to place the center point. You can grab basically anywhere in space and then rotate it around, type 120, enter. So now I've copied it once. I need to do it one more time. Click the point of origin, grab anywhere in space, rotate it around, type 120, enter. So now I've created the basic shape. So you can see here, compared to that one, they look very similar. May not be exact, but it's close enough. Okay, so now this is our outline, and if I wanted to create this and have it be very basic, what I need to do now is eliminate the dividing lines that still exist. So I want this all to be one continuous shape. So I'm going to use the erase tool and start erasing things that I don't need. So I don't want the barrier here, I don't want the barrier here. I'm just going around and deleting things that I don't need. So So basically I wanted to define one complete area. So here is the area for all the plastic to create a very basic fidget spinner. But it's not filled as a surface. So here's one trick, actually a couple tips. One, this is made up of several different line segments. I'm going to go ahead and open the properties here so you can see the entity info. So what I have selected right now is an arc that has 16 segments. As I click around, you can see they're different lines made of different shorter straight segments. So what I want to do is basically make this all one continuous shape. I'm going to do that by clicking on one of these arcs and then two finger tapping or right click to get the menu, and then hover over select and then choose all connected. It's going to select any line segments that were connected to the original that we just selected. So now that they're all outlined in blue, I'm going to again right click or two finger tap and choose weld edges. This welds it all into one curve. You can see now this is all one curve with 84 segments. So that's going to be helpful because now that it's all one basic shape in this Sketchup for schools, the way that you can make an enclosed area a surface is simply by drawing a line across from one end to another. So I'm going to click here with the line tool and then click on the opposite side to close in the space. I don't know why it's built this way, but this is the way that you close in an area if the area was deleted. So the defined area looks white if it's a defined area. So if there were not a surface, there would be nothing for me to push-pull to make a solid. So now that I have this, I can go ahead and delete that line that I just made, and it will remain a surface area. Now one thing to be mindful of, if I click this, it's filled in the surface where the holes used to be. So now if I go into push-pull this, it won't have the holes. So I'm going to, before I do this, recreate these circles on the current surface. So because they weren't there before the surface got filled in, actually they were, but because they were before, it just got filled in. It ignored the circles there. So now I'm going to draw it on top of the surface. So you can reference each of the centers. So I'm just going to go ahead and click the point of origin, again following the green axis all the way to where it intersects the current circle. Now you can see that the circle even looks different. It's not as bold, which means it's kind of integrated into the surface. Go ahead and repeat the steps. If you don't find the center, here's a couple tips. So as you're scrolling around, if it doesn't give you the center point, I found if you scroll over the edge, it will reference the center point, and then you can quickly go over and it tends to kind of snap there. If that doesn't work, you can, I believe, right click and choose find center, and it really stays there. You can see the center. So now I can click here, then follow along the green axis point and click. Whoops, I wanted to go farther than that. Let me undo. Click the center point, go all the way till it intersects the circle, and then click. So I just have two more to do. Find the center point, click. Okay, now if I go to push pull, it's going to just push pull what I want. I can actually see it, visualize it. If I use the select tool and click on my area, you can see that there's a distinction between the outside and the insides of the circles. So what I could do now, before I even push pull, is I could go ahead and select these and click backspace to get rid of them. So here's my basic outlined area. And before I go ahead and extrude this, I'm going to actually use this shape again later on. So here's just part of my workflow. If I'm going to modify something and I want to retain the original, I like to make a copy of it. So I'm going to select everything that I've created so far. Let's draw a box around it. Then I'm going to use the move tool, but go ahead and get into copy mode by pressing Control. I'm just going to grab it anywhere and then move it a measurement that's easy to remember, and also along an axis, so I know I can move it back if I ever need to. So I'm going to go along the red axis with this copy, and I'm going to type in 100 for 100 millimeters. That's really easy to remember. So now I have a copy of my outline for the fidget spinner. I'm going to go ahead and extrude this one to show you a very basic fidget spinner shape. So the height that we want for this is going to be 7 millimeters. So this would be a very basic fidget spinner, nice and symmetrical. It's been measured so that the bearings can fit inside these specifically. Looks really nice. But this is basic. This is a basic two-dimensional shape that's been push-pulled to create a solid. We're going to take it one step further. So let's say I want to just curve the edges here so it's nice and smooth. I'm going to show you the way to do that in SketchUp.